Hello everyone and welcome back to the final chicane with me, Cristinboylan. Welcome back again. The Monaco Grand Prix weekend is done. We've a lot to talk about, or maybe not a lot to talk about, I haven't decided yet. It was a very mixed weekend. I mean, one of the best race results, maybe not one of the most interesting races, but of course there's still stuff to talk about. I mean, I don't think anyone was not happy to see Charles win at Monaco, his home Grand Prix, a long time coming. I think it was an emotional end to the race. The race itself, yeah, we'll talk about that. But first, we will do, as always, the Riddle of the Week. I don't think anyone got the riddle right last week. I didn't see any right answers. It was a hard one, I know. I don't know if this one is any easier, but it is a bit shorter. So let me know if you get it right. Here it is. Who am I, a racing star, three-time champion known afar? From Scotland's roads to F1's fame, I changed the sport, improved the game. In BRM and Tyrrell I raced, safety measures I embraced. A crash at Spa opened my eyes, I fought for changes to save lives. A knighted Scot who changed the game, in racing's world I made my name. Who am I, both fast and wise, in speed and safety my impact lies. So who is that? As always, I will tell you the answer and who that is at the end of today's episode. But until then, you can guess and you can leave your answers below. It's quite a popular name. Not too many Formula 1 drivers have been knighted, so actually I don't think it should be too hard. Just guess one of them. Guess one of the stars. We'll talk about this race weekend. I know I usually start with the media moments from before the Grand Prix, but there honestly hasn't been that many. Silly season has sort of calmed down a bit. I mean, I know usually it hadn't even started by now in the past, but obviously this start of the year has been sort of mental in Formula 1. It's sort of nice to just not have some overwhelming news this week or last week. And I sort of hope that continues for a couple more weeks so we can just process what's happening so far in the season. Formula 1 can be the most overwhelming sport at times because there's just so much to happen, so much that you need to know, that you need to learn, just a lot to keep up with. And that's what I'm here to help with. I'm here to tell you about everything that's happened. But luckily this week we don't have too much. I mean, my favourite media moment from the weekend was Oscar becoming Leclerc. If you missed that, if you don't have social media, it's quite easy to miss these stuff and you'll be a bit confused. I don't know if the graphic on the TV actually said Oscar Pastry Leclerc or if that was just what they posted on social media afterwards because I didn't see. But if you didn't know, basically every race weekend Oscar is sort of on Twitter, jokes about trying to find like that he is some part of that country, so it can be his home race. He did it for Italy, obviously for Australia, I think, was it Japan that he did it for as well? I'll find the tweets for you now. Sorry, it was China, my bad. He goes, my great grandfather was Chinese, so I think that makes this my 1/16th home race. Good time to mention I'm also 3/16th Italian for Imola. And then this week he posted, searching my family tree to find any trace of Monegasque roots. And then Charles replied, I can adopt you if needed. And Oscar agreed. Oscar said, call me Oscar Jack Piastri Leclerc. Want to meet my new brother Leo on Thursday if he can pop to McLaren. So then that running joke sort of continued. After free practice, they put Leclerc's second name, Oscar Piastri Leclerc, onto Oscar. And then Oscar's mom, who is hilarious, by the way, if you don't follow her on social media, you should. She tweeted, guess like, I don't know her exact words. She was like, oh, there's a place in my family now for a son at Yuki Tsunoda, seeing if Yuki wanted to be adopted. So I loved that. That was quite a funny moment between everyone, and it's still going on. I'm sure it'll probably end after this weekend. But yeah, Oscar somehow wormed his way into having this as his home race as well. Obviously not, actually. It was just a bit of fun. Staying on the lines of McLaren, I know that they had a special livery for Senna this weekend. They had a green and yellow car, the Brazilian flag, for Senna, but also sort of like a tribute to his McLaren days. I don't think there was any other media moments from this weekend. I really don't. I don't have anything else wrote down. Actually, did you see the boat at Monaco who crashed onto the jetty. That was insane. So it was a water taxi and there was no one on the boat. There was only the driver on it who was driving, and then I think he must have jumped off whenever he lost control of it, or maybe he fell off, I'm not too sure. But the boat went onto the jetty, hit into a couple of other boats. If you've seen the video of one of like the captains of another boat describing what happened, he was like, "Oh, this little boat over here," and pointed to a yacht. That's Monaco though. Yeah, if you see the video, like a couple of people that literally had to jump out of the way or else they would have been run over by a boat on land, which you're probably not going to be looking out for, you never expect. And someone had to come over to hit the kill switch on the boat because the boat was still going. It wasn't moving, but it was still on. But I think everyone was fine. I'm sure the driver, the captain of the boat, was fine in the end. That was a bit of a scary moment. A few scary moments actually in Monaco this weekend. A bit of danger with the crashing and the boat. I unfortunately did not get to watch free practice this weekend. I know I'm slacking off a bit there, so I've nothing to tell you from that, but I don't think there was much going on anyway. I know some of them touched the wall. I know Bottas brought out a red flag. So yeah, just not much to report from free practice. I know I usually do go from like media, free practice, quality race, but I feel like I should just now talk on a more general basis. Still in that order, but you know, I'm not going to focus when there's just not much to talk about because you don't want to hear me yap about things that aren't important for 30 minutes, you know. Qualifying at Monaco is definitely one of my favourite qualifyings of the whole season. It's because I just love being at Monaco, like watching the cars drive around at Monaco, like just literally just watching them, because I just find it so satisfying to watch. I love the Monaco track. I like how they literally touch the wall when they're going around, but that's what they want to do because they need to get close to get that extra like half a tenth or whatever it is, and how little the margins are and how perfect of a lap that you need. I love that. And unfortunately, it is quite usual to not expect much happening on the Sunday or for the rest of the weekend. But qualifying didn't disappoint. The home hero, Charles Leclerc, on pole. Beautiful lap, perfect lap. Charles had a perfect weekend, really. And it wasn't like he was miles ahead. He was a tiny, tiny bit ahead of the McLaren of Oscar as well, which is nice. It was very refreshing of a weekend for it to be a Ferrari and a McLaren really fighting for that while the Red Bulls were nowhere. Yeah, the Red Bulls were nowhere this weekend, which was such a surprise because, you know, it's not often that we see them without like a proper issue so far back. And I don't hate to see Red Bull doing well, but it was just a nice change. It's always a nice change to see someone new on it. I mean, Perez, where did he finish? Like P18 or something in qualifying, and I still don't know what happened there. Like, it was just not a good lap. It's not like he crashed. It's not like he spun off. He just didn't put it together again. Second weekend in a row, he didn't really put it together, but this one being out in Q3 was sort of insane. The Haas, they got disqualified. It has been a long time. I don't remember the last time a car has got disqualified in qualifying. The last disqualification I remember, I might be missing one, is Seb. And I think it might have been Hungary maybe. He got a podium anyway and he was disqualified. But that was the last disqualification I remember. It was a rear wing infringement. And then Gunther adding gasoline to the fire. Is that the phrase? Probably not. Fuel to the fire? Don't know. I don't think it's gasoline anyway. Posted a picture of a measuring tape on his Instagram just to add a bit of like, that wouldn't have happened if I was there. Who knows? Might have, probably would have, to be honest. But both Haas's got disqualified. Not their best weekend. I know Magnussen wasn't really anywhere. And Nico didn't make it into Q3 this weekend. I think he might have been P12 before he got disqualified. But yeah, luckily that wasn't anything. It was no like sort of penalty points for them because Magnussen, like I said, just needs 2 more penalty points before he gets a race ban. And I'm pretty sure that race ban will come. I think unless his penalty points disappear, unless some of them expire, a race ban is coming his way eventually. Luckily, he has kept it quite clean though the last 3 weeks. So well done, Magnussen. Charles P1, Oscar P2, Carlos P3, Lando P4. Nice, satisfying sort of lineup. Ferrari, McLaren. Oscar was the faster McLaren all weekend. He was looking strong. He was a real contender for pole, which would have been an incredible pole to get at Monaco. Monaco is one of like the the poles or the wins that people want most, because it's just such like an honourable thing. Winning at Monaco is like a dream for a lot of drivers. Pierre P10, first Q3 of the season, and he was so excited about that. Always love to see, like, you know, like when George got his first Williams point. I think maybe Williams got their first Q3. I think Alex got his first Q3 this weekend as well for Williams. I just love those sort of moments. So yeah, Pierre P10 and Alex with his first Q3 for Williams at P9. I think Logan was P15, which, you know, not too bad after the two Haas, but still, you know, it's okay. Max 6th, again, with no big issue. That was quite a surprise. Usually we're not used to seeing Max on screen because he's so far ahead of everyone that it's just not interesting. But now there was just nothing happening, so I don't remember seeing him on screen once actually during the race, which was, yeah, it's very different. Actually, Orbi did a cute little challenge this weekend just for their social media. It was Orbi and Red Bull. Orbi, Visa, Cash App, Orbi, that's what I call them. I should probably just say Visa, Cash App, Orbi, but I think you know what I mean when I say Orbi. They had to like build a raft and put their Barbie dolls in a pool and sort of use like a seat to blow wind to get the raft to move in the Monaco pool. And that was a fun challenge if you just wanted to go watch that. I'm sure it's on Red Bull's social media. Obviously it didn't go as planned. I think neither raft sort of survived. I think Max got fed up and started throwing them at the end. Anyway, back to qualifying. No one tries harder at Monaco than Charles Leclerc. It's such a special home race for him. It's such a special race in general, I know. But him getting pole was special. Everyone loved to see that. I feel like most people just love to see Charles do well. I think there's a few drivers on the grid that like everyone just loves to see do well. Because obviously it wasn't Charles's first win, you know, he's won a few times before. He's got many, many poles. But I feel like drivers like Charles and Daniel, you know, drivers like that, no matter how many wins they got, people just sort of like to see them do well. And I agree. The race, okay, I was trying to hype myself up about the race, but I had a feeling it wasn't going to be the most interesting race. Like, even when it rains at Monaco, which I think the past 2 years it might have been raining at Monaco, it's not the most interesting race, which is saying something, because races in the rain, wet races, can be a lot. But yeah, I'm sure Charles fans were completely stressed the entire race. I'm sure not a second of that race was boring for them. For us, because everyone is a Charles fan. I wore my red actually today. I don't have any Ferrari merch. I do have the Ferrari jacket, but I can't wear that for a podcast because it's too loud and rustly and it just picks up on the microphone. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that I did wear red today for Charles. I think I wore red last week as well, actually, but this one is for Charles. So yeah, I think we all know what we're expecting when it comes to Monaco race day. It really wasn't a great race. I think Stroll made the most overtakes during the entire race, and that was 2. He got a puncture and it wasn't even that exciting. And the pit stops as well are so fast. They're like 10 seconds because, you know, the track itself is quite slow track. So it's often that they don't even come out behind people. I think one of the most interesting battles, which wasn't really a battle, was Alonso, Stroll and Ricciardo. And basically it was Stroll ahead in P10, I think, and Alonso was just going slow because he knows that the Orbi wouldn't be able to overtake the Aston Martin. Keeping Daniel behind, he made quite a gap. I mean, a good bit over 10 seconds. So when Stroll did pit, he got back into his position. He didn't even overtake Alonso, obviously, because Daniel was like side by side with Alonso for a lot of it. Yeah, you know, you can't do anything. Daniel was quite disappointed with his qualifying, actually. He got P13, I think, moved up to P12 with the Haas being disqualified. He was in good form all weekend. His parents were at the race. I saw a picture of his mom and dad getting off the boat. So, and obviously with the history that Daniel has at Monaco, he's going to want to be doing well. But yeah, he was quite disappointed with that. He was not happy in his post-quali interviews, but he seemed a bit like, it is what it is after the race. I'm sure he never wants to see the back of that Aston Martin again. But honestly, I don't think Alonso would have let him overtake, even if he did some lunge. I don't think both of them would have made it out, to be honest. I can't believe I've just skipped over lap 1. I actually forgot about lap 1 for a second. I'm going to be completely honest. Sorry. The first lap of the Monaco Grand Prix was actually insane because so much was happening. Straight off the line, Charles had a good start. Oscar didn't have a perfect start. And then Oscar made the slightest bit of contact with Carlos. Carlos got a puncture and he was out of the race. He stopped. There was a yellow flag in that sector. But then an even bigger crash happened a few corners later, where basically I think what happened was that Magnussen tagged Perez, hit Perez. Perez goes into the wall, goes this way, and then flies into Hulkenberg. So that's the two Haas's and Perez out. That investigation wasn't, or there was no investigation, basically that incident wasn't investigated at all, which Perez wasn't happy about. It was a big crash. The state of the Red Bull, when it showed the camera before it actually like showed the impact or whatever, the camera showed the Red Bull, it was in pieces. And that's what's supposed to happen, you know, that's how the cars are built, to protect the driver. The cars just completely come apart. But it is sort of a scary thing to see, and especially at a small track like that, and Perez going sideways, he could have easily went into someone. If there were a few more cars behind him, that could have been a lethal accident. But thank God there was no injuries in that accident. I'm not completely sure how much of it was Magnussen's fault. I know Hulk was just a passenger in it, you know, Perez as well. If it was a Magnussen fault or if it was, you know, a first lap incident, obviously the FIA saw it more as a first lap incident, so it wasn't investigated. But thank God, because that would have got Magnussen 2 at least penalty points and he would not be driving in Canada. So yeah, quite a scary crash from Perez there, quite a scary crash and a high impact crash to look at. And then that wasn't even it. So we had Carlos with the puncture, we had 3 cars out, both Haas's and Perez, and then the Alpines, Tom and Jerry, were fighting their own little battle. Honestly, okay, so Esteban did get blamed for the crash. If you missed it, Esteban sort of went in to make a move that you shouldn't be making on your own teammate for, you know, whatever position it was, 10th or whatever, going into the tunnel in Monaco. Esteban sort of left no space, went into Pierre obviously back into Esteban, Esteban's car sort of going up. Esteban was blamed for it and he did apologise. I'll see if I can see his apology on his Instagram. So on Instagram, Esteban posted, "Today's incident was my fault. The gap was too small in the end and I apologise to the team on this one. Hoping for a deserved points finish for the team today." So he posted that, you know, mid-race. And Pierre definitely wasn't happy about that, but Alpine were really not happy about that. And Bruno said something quite dramatic. He said Esteban's attack was completely out of circumstances. It's exactly what we didn't want to see. We will draw consequences. We will decide straight away. That to me is alluding to Esteban being gone soon, like mid-season gone, which I don't agree with, because Esteban, okay, undoubtedly Esteban is quite harsh on his teammates on track, which honestly it didn't really happen with Daniel, but more with Alonso and now with Pierre. But I also think there's a bit of that from Pierre's side as well. Esteban isn't a bad driver. Pierre's not. I don't think Pierre is better than him. I think that they are quite equal. I think they're one of the more equally measured drivers on the grid. But then again, Alpine have to decide if say Jack Doohan, who is the reserve driver who's been waiting in the wings for a very long time, Australian as well, if, you know, he will be just as good and maybe cause less incidents, or maybe he won't be as good but he will still cause less incidents. That could be like what they're deciding. I don't think Esteban deserves to lose his seat, as much as I would love to see Jack Doohan in Formula 1. It's not up to me. I'm not in this role for a reason, because I can never fire a Formula 1 driver. But that's quite a harsh thing to say to the media. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Esteban. I talk about it a lot, but I do think that the team bosses and the role of the team and the CEO is to support the drivers that they have, and I never agree with talking in a manner like that to the press instead of to the driver on a private level, because obviously it adds fire to the flame. So that might be something that he either needs to get a grip on straight away, or maybe it's too late. But that was very dramatic of a moment. I don't think he's in any shape or form a bad driver. I don't think he's a worse driver than Pierre, but it is just that recklessness maybe. I'd say that's just all that is about. So yeah, lap 1 obviously was full of a lot of drama. Obviously they couldn't repair Pierre's or Esteban's car, sorry. So Esteban was out. We figured that out because he was just wearing his jeans like right before the race was going to start. And yeah, unfortunately the rest of the race did not have that sort of drama. No safety cars, or I don't even think there was any flags. I think there might have been like a brief yellow flag for the rest of the race in one of the sectors, but that was about it. No one was trying to overtake. It was quite sad because all of Alonso's work on keeping Daniel behind to give Stroll a gap came to nothing because Stroll, I think, just went too close to the wall, punctured a tyre and had to box, and he boxed onto softs. He made some overtakes on softs. I think he got past a Williams and a Seba, but he couldn't get past Bottas, and so he couldn't get past Daniel. And I really don't think Daniel would be letting anyone past him anyway. He was probably quite annoyed to be stuck behind the Aston Martin. And then at the end of the race, Alonso also thought that he was P10. He thought he had a point, but he didn't. He was P11. So maybe he would have just not defended from Stroll for that long defended for Stroll for that long if he realised that he wasn't even in the points himself. Actually, one thing I didn't understand, maybe some of you will know, but obviously there was the restart, and since they mustn't have got enough time to sector in, however it works, they went back to the original position, which means that since all was wrong with Carlos was a puncture, he could go back to P3. But the only person I think who didn't go back to their original position was Daniel. Now, Daniel got overtaken by Stroll at the start, but he qualified ahead of Stroll. But then he started the restart behind Stroll, even though everyone else went back to the position, to their qualifying positions. That's something I don't understand. I'm sure there's a reason behind it. It might be like where you were at a certain time or something like that. But I was a little confused about that. It was probably to do with like a safety car line or something. But yeah, also actually, I know I keep jumping back into pieces, but there was actually a photographer injured during the crash between the two Haas's and Perez, an Italian photographer. He was okay though. I just want to point that out because there is a video going around of the crash and all the debris that comes over the wall, the barriers to the photographers. Quite scary. Formula 1 has always been a sport, not always, but at times it's been a sport where not the drivers aren't the only one who could get injured. We've seen tragedies with the spectators as well, and stewards and photographers, everyone. But luckily he is okay. See, that's what happens when I write my notes like completely in a random order. So also Esteban, again, jumping back to things, I need to start ordering my notes properly, but Esteban got a 10-second penalty, which will be converted to, I heard, a 5-place grid drop, which is huge. It's usually a 3-place grid drop for stuff like that. But obviously the FIA felt it was quite a big move and mistake from Esteban in the next race. So if Esteban is racing in Canada, that will be quite a big grid drop for him. Bottas was the first to box. He boxed quite early, lap 16, I think, and usually, pitting takes place around lap 30, maybe mid-30s. But obviously things were changing because not everyone had to box since they got to box with the red flag. If you don't know, you have to box once in a race and you have to change tyre compounds. So everyone after the red flag changed whatever tyre they weren't on the start, so they wouldn't have to box unless they wanted to, and then some people chose they wanted to box during the race. So they were the people who probably started on mediums. But yeah, and then for some reason, Logan Sargent started after the red flag on the same tyre that he started the race on, so he had to box again because you have to change tyre compounds, as I said. So I don't really know what that move was about. I don't know why Williams did that. I mean, I guess you just have to hope for like a new sort of outcome at that point. So yeah, there wasn't too much else that went on during the race, apart from in P1, which was Charles Leclerc at his home race, the only Monegasque on the grid. And he won. He was saying that with like 2 laps to go, he was like tearing up thinking about his dad and like just winning the Monaco Grand Prix, that he was struggling to see. He had to pull back on that a bit. And his radio after he won, he was so emotional. He was screaming and crying. And the commentary as well. I was watching on Sky Sports, but I saw the F1 TV commentary afterwards. It was Alex doing his thing, and he was talking about how special it was for Charles's dad, because Charles, if you don't know, Charles lied, just a little lie, to his dad shortly before his dad passed, because his dad was ill, saying that he had got the role as a Ferrari Formula 1 driver, and that wasn't true yet, but it did come true. And yeah, just about how much Charles has made it to win at Monaco. And it was such a special moment. Charles was really emotional. Charles also jumped into the harbour, usually, the pool, but that's not a thing anymore. So he jumped in the harbour and everyone was happy to see that. And his whole family there. I saw a TikTok of one of Charles's best friends, Ricardo, on the balcony crying, because that's just how much it means to everyone who knows Charles, and obviously the locals in Monaco. I think even the prince was getting a little emotional about Charles winning. So it made the race worth it, watching the race worth it, to see Charles finally win. I don't think Charles would leave Formula 1 without winning Monaco ever. And yeah, he's also quite close to Max now in the standings. There's a 31 point difference between Charles and Max, which is nothing. Like, if Red Bull, listen, I'm not going to get anyone's hopes up, but if Red Bull continue to have problems and Ferrari continue to full force steam ahead, this could be a close championship. But then again, do we think Red Bull are going to have problems? I don't. I think this might just drive Max more than ever to want to win the next few races. All of the next races. There's quite a few left. I'd say there's probably like 15 or something races still to go. Also, so nice to hear the Monaco national anthem and the Italian national anthem. The Italian national anthem, heard that live in Monza. What a bop. I love that. And also, I posted a video on my TikTok of Daniel bopping to that anthem in Imola. I just love hearing that anthem. But yeah, that would have been such an emotional moment for Charles and for his family and for everyone. And then they went out to celebrate after. I think they went to Jimmy's, like the prince and the princess and Charles. Actually, fun fact, I've been at Jimmy's before. I've been to Monaco once and I loved it so much. But if you're ever curious about what the price range would be for Jimmy's, one vodka lemon, I think it was like literally just like a vodka lemon, was €50. So me and Ellen, my cousin, we got one drink each the whole night out in Jimmy's, and we were there till 4 a.m. We were there from before 12 to after 4, I think, with just one drink in us, just like observing everyone, because we just love to people watch. And Monaco was just, I just want to go back. Someone please invite me to Monaco again. Honestly, the prices in Monaco are not as bad as you think. Like, that drink, obviously, like, we saw the Belvedere vodka behind the shelf, so we knew sort of what we were getting into. We were lucky to get in, because we've heard a lot of stories about people not getting in, so we were just relieved to get in. We were like, now we need to look like we belong here, we need to fit in. So we weren't going to ask the bartender how much this drink was. We were just praying that we could afford it. And yeah, it was a little more expensive than I thought. €50 obviously for a single vodka, but it was worth it for the vibes. And I think Ellen probably has the receipt still. But I feel like we got a taxi there because we were actually staying in Monaco and it wasn't that expensive for one night. Well, it was like €100 for one night, I think, each. But we were expecting, like, to actually stay in Monaco. The food there isn't too bad, and the taxi, I think, was like 15 minutes, and I think maybe €20. And for me, that's the same as it would be where I live in Ireland. If I'm going into 15 minutes into Drogheda, it would be that expensive for me. So that wasn't too bad. And it was so handy because the hotel called a taxi for us, and then when you're leaving Jimmy's, they have people out there to just get you a taxi to go home. And it was so nice. And we were staying in the nicest place in Monaco as well, because the guy who was on watch for the night, like, had to stay up to wait for us to come home. I mean, he was on a night shift, like, he would have been up anyway, I'm sure, but, like, we had drinks before we left the hotel as well, and I'm pretty sure they were a normal price, like €8 or something, which is like the same as Dublin. Yeah, if anyone wants to hear about my time in Monaco, I could get my cousin on the podcast, see if she wants to talk about it. Let me know, and I'd love to make an episode on that. I love Monaco. I love it so much. It was a bit up and down, but overall, lovely time. And I might go back this year. We'll have to see. We'll have to see where our bank accounts are at. That's actually all I have to talk about the Grand Prix. because just not much happened. We've Canada this weekend, 10-year anniversary since Daniel Ricciardo's first win I saw just before I started this podcast. And Canada, the home of Lewis's first win as well. Love the Canadian Grand Prix. I really struggle to watch the Canadian Grand Prix because of what is the animal that just dies at it so much, gets run over. I think Latifi hit one and his radio message sounded like he was crying. And I just can't watch because I can't deal with animals dying in any shape or form. I do watch, obviously, but that really ruins my weekend, to be honest. I'll do the riddle of the week before I lose yous, because I'm sure you're dying to know who the answer was. So, the answer of today's riddle of the week was Sir Jackie Stewart. Yay! The icon himself, still thriving around the place. Jackie Stewart, who was born John Young Stewart in 1939. He was born in, okay, hear me out for this, Dumbartonshire, Scotland, Dumbartonshire. Not too hard of a name, but you know I struggle with my pronunciation. So his father actually owned a garage business, and his older brother Jimmy was the first in the family to try racing. You'd actually be sick if your younger sibling came into racing after you and was just like Jackie Stewart, He struggled with dyslexia in school, and he left school at 15, but he only was diagnosed with dyslexia later in life. So then he took up clay pigeon shooting, and very interestingly, he was one of Britain's best shots in clay pigeon shooting. I don't know anything about that sport, but he just seems to be quite a talented person in general, doesn't he? But his true calling was to the racetrack, and he began racing saloons and sports cars in 1963. Then in 1963, Ken Terrell, which I mentioned in the riddle, noticed his potential and hired him to take part in British Formula 3 series. And Jackie Stewart just dominated that series. He won 7 races in a row. And by 1965, he had joined the BRM Formula 1 team, where he stayed for 3 seasons. And he won 2 Grand Prix. And he just became a front runner. His career though, Jackie Stewart's career, did take off more in 1968 when Tyrrell decided to enter Formula 1. And his partnership with Tyrrell would become one of the most productive in Formula 1 history, in Formula 1 racing. Over 6 seasons, he was the driver to beat. And he retired in 1973, just at the age of 34, quite young to retire nowadays. And he won 27 races and 3 world championships. And this record made him the most successful driver since Juan Manuel Fangio. However, his impact obviously extended beyond his results. He had such a huge role to play in the safety of Formula 1. The chances of a driver who raced for 5 years being killed were 2 out of 3 when he was racing in Formula 1. And this particularly hit home during the 1966 Grand Prix in Belgium, where Jackie had quite a big crash. He was trapped in his car and there was fuel leaking around him. Could have easily died. Obviously, being stuck in a moment where you could easily be killed like that can make a big impact on you. And he decided then, he went on a sort of a crusade for safety and improved medical in Formula 1. I think he was sort of mainly responsible for full face helmets, seat belts, medical facilities, safety barriers, greater runoff areas. He just wanted to protect the drivers and the spectators, which is essential to Formula 1 now. A lot of people criticise the safety measures that Formula 1 has taken, but then measures were brought in to stop drivers from dying and to stop spectators from dying. Like the halo, I know that got a lot of criticism because of how it looked, but when you think about the amount of lives who have been saved because of the halo, you can't dispute its importance in Formula 1. Jackie also became a media personality and a TV commentator in 1971. He worked for ABC TV and he provided live coverage of the Monaco Grand Prix, which was quite a big move in sports broadcasting. He obviously continued to have a huge role in sport even after he retired. In 1999, he had his Stewart Grand Prix race team, which won race, but it was sold to Ford. And he received a knighthood, I think in 2001, Sir Jackie Stewart. It just shows how one driver is all it takes for the sport to be completely changed in ways for the better. He's quite an inspirational figure. I'll go into Fantasy Formula 1 now because I haven't looked at where I am and I'm a little scared because I'm pretty sure I had Max as like the main one on my team. So let me see. I'll go into my final chicane league. Okay, I've moved up. Wow, I'm rank 6th on my B team and rank 9, which I've moved down, on my final chicane team. Unfortunately, the winner stays the same as last week, bro. It's Verstappening, Arthur Wrigley, 1,006. You're only 30 points ahead of P2, which is Ricky Bobby Shake and Bake. That is quite a good team. Max Lewis, Oscar, Lando, Charles. I want that team. I won't. I'll stick with my team. Like I said yesterday, I struggle to change my drivers because I want to pick the ones at the start of the season and just like pray for them throughout. Who's last? Let's call out who's last. Again, Pegro F1 team are last. I think he might have been last year as well. Sorry, Irwan, but let me know if you watch this podcast. But yeah, I've moved up to 6. I'm nearly in the top 5 and I will get into the top 5, okay? I will change my team for Canada. I will say that. So let me know if you're actually part of my Formula 1 league. Is that all to talk about? I know we didn't have too much to talk about. If you're watching on video, I know some people suggested that I change my background, which is obviously a great idea. When I have time, I'll put a bit more effort into it. But you can see, I know it's inverted, but that says the final chicane on that board there. And then I have all of my caps. My signed Sauber Alfa Romeo cap. I don't think that Daniel one is signed actually. My Silverstone one is signed by both Alfa Romeo drivers, I think, because that's when I met them. And then I have that champion one. But yeah, I thought, a little bit, that makes it a bit more interesting if you can see that. I will also say, just while I have the bit of extra time now, I know that from the start, if you've been listening from the start, I've always talked about wanting to interview people on my podcast, people involved in Formula 1, whether it's team members or, drivers from any sort of motorsport series. That's always something that I really wanted to do, to provide you with that insight as well. And I am working on it. It is hard. It's hard to just get that first person because you've nothing to show to try and convince other people to come onto it. I'm telling you this because we're on this journey together. And I just want to be honest with you and let you know that I am trying. But it is hard to get that first person to trust that it'll be a good interview because, everyone else is like, oh, but she hasn't interviewed anyone. It's important to remember for me that I'm asking people to do more work outside of their already like hectic lifestyle and, everything. Like it's not the easiest thing to go on a podcast to talk about your job after doing your job, it's extra work. So yeah, I actually did get a reply from someone that I didn't even think I'd get a reply from, being like, oh, we looked at your podcast, it looks great, but right now it's just not a great time because of but I was so happy to get that reply, to be honest. So if anyone does know anyone who works in Formula 1 who would want to come onto the pod for a quick interview, then do let me know. But you know what, I will get someone on because I'm not going to stop. I just feel like now in our relationship with everyone, with all my I feel like my YouTube are like my most loyal listeners now, which has overtaken Spotify. I actually gave I posted it on YouTube before Spotify as a little thank you last week because I know how much you love my podcast. So just know that I appreciate yous, I recognise the same like names from comments, and even on Spotify and on Instagram I recognise the people who are always liking my stuff and commenting and stuff. So I appreciate your support on this little podcast and I hope that it grows with all of us, and I'll do my best to make that happen. So thank you. I hope to be able to bring you some more interesting interviews. I'll be going to the Barcelona Grand Prix, so in that way I will be able to bring you more in-depth information and stuff like that. So thank you for your support so far. This is just the beginning, guys, of the final chicane. Okay, this is the first chicane of the final chicane. And we can only get faster from here. I'll see you for the Canada recap. Goodbye.